Hey, my name's Sebastian and I'm the author of Microthemer, which is a point-and-click style editor for WordPress. It has tons of styling options like fonts and shadow and grid and animation, and we've just recently added support for CSS masks and simple shapes, and that's what I'm going to show you how to use in this video. So we'll cover things like how to create these angular shapes on a section using the clip path property, as well as applying these angled, this is called triangular fibers effect, by setting a background image that's semi-transparent, and then it's just blending with the blue background that we've set as a solid color. We'll also look at how to convert a square image shape into a more organic rounded shape by setting a mask image. We will also look at how to apply multiple masks to a single image using comma-separated position coordinates to align the individual masks that we've set. We'll also look at how to create a fade just using a regular CSS gradient in the mask image property value. And we will look at how to align text around an image that's floated just next to it using the shape outside CSS property, and also how to create this overlapping text where you've got a semi-transparent image and you can set the threshold of where the text should stop based on the level of opacity in the image using this image threshold property. We'll also look at how to create these wavy shape dividers by creating a selector using the before and after pseudo syntax, and that allows us basically to create dividers that can be set to the top or bottom of a section of content that might have an unknown height, and still keep the proportions of our shape divider, which is very wide and not very tall. And finally, we'll finish by looking at how to apply shape dividers to a plain image as well, because we can't use before or after pseudo elements on an image because images don't have they can't have children. It's not valid syntax to apply a before or after pseudo element to them, so we need a different workaround, and I found one using using multiple masks and combining a gradient with our shape divider. So now let's reset Microthemer so we can try out all these styles from scratch. And you can learn how to do it yourself. And by the way, I will include a link to this online demo so you can follow along with the video. So to start with, let's select this header image here, and then I'm going to apply a blue background. So I think it was maybe this color, slightly darker because, actually, and I'm going to turn off the highlighting here so we can see what we're doing a bit more clearly. And then I'm going to set a background image. So Microthemer has, at the moment, just these two stock background images. I will add more upon request, but I was mainly working on masks with this feature, so I just added these images as background images because I thought they work well as a background image, and maybe better than a mask as well sometimes. So by default, what we have is it repeats. So it's this is the natural dimensions of the mask the triangular background, and to make it fill the full width, we want to set the background size option to cover. So now it covers the whole area here. And now to create our, oh, and by the way, just to going back to this point, so there are two options. The black one would make it darker. So triangulify black opacity or triangulify white opacity for the light version. I'm going to stick with the white one for now. So now we can just create our cutout shape on it. That's the last thing we need to do. So if we go to the mask options, the clip path option is what we're going to use here. We could use a mask image, but for simple shapes, the clip path property is fine, and maybe slightly more preferable because it means we can create our shape without loading an image. So I've got a couple of presets here for creating angled sections. The reason that these values have square brackets around when most property drop-down menus in Microthemer don't, is because bottom center point isn't actually a CSS language term. It's just a reference to what the shape's going to look like. So if I put that in, you can see that Microthemer's input some valid CSS here, which is a polygon. There's a bunch of other properties here, shapes to choose from. These were taken from a website called Clippy, this one here. I wanted to credit the guy who created this website here. He's provided a bunch of like polygon shapes here, which I've included in Microthemer, so you can just look out for the name. You still might want to use this website for moving the points around, customizing them, and then you can just copy and paste this value here into Microthemer. You do still have control over the points. So for instance, in Microthemer, if I just, there's various ways of changing these values. If I hold the Alt key down and move my mouse wheel up, I can adjust it with, like that, or I could use this slider here. This is a new feature in Microthemer where you can control individual lines here, like so. Just by clicking on one and then the slider will update, so you can have fine control. I basically added this because of this polygon editing and path editing you might want to do. So let me just, I think I preferred the even shapes here. So the other thing we can do with these path polygon shapes is that we can actually animate them. So what I'm going to do is adjust these values. By the way, if you hold Alt and Shift, you can move them up in increments of ×10. So I'm going to use my mouse to just align this square again, and this is that's 110. This is what you need to do when you're animating polygons, is that you need to have the same number of points. Okay, so although this looks the same as if I hadn't defined any polygon at all, it's actually necessary for when we want to animate it. So I'm just going to go to the transition properties, and I'm going to set clip path as the property I want to animate. I'm going to say a duration of, I don't know, 1 second. And I'm going to say just when it comes in view. So let's try that. And the event value, I'm now going to, because I cut that polygon before where it was pointy. So if I paste that in, you can see that that animates up. So the in view event just means whenever this comes in view, so whenever the page loads, this will run. Okay, so now moving on to making this shape a little bit more organic. If we go back to the mask properties, we've got some gradients that we can apply. And actually, before I do this, I'm just going to set repeat. Like background image, the repeat option is always set to repeat, but quite often you'll want to set that to no repeat. And then I'm also going to set the size to cover, like I did with the blue header up here. So let's set that to cover. And then when we cycle through the options in the list, so with gradients it doesn't really matter, but you can see we've got a few gradients from left to right, basically just different angles, just to save you some time entering gradient values. We've also got some slightly more advanced gradients, conic gradients, checkered board. So these like radial gradients, which we'll use a bit later, and radial rings. And some of these were just to show you, they've just been included to show you like the valid syntax for what you can do with a gradient. So you can play around with all these values here. And then we've also got now onto the images. So this is where we wanted to have no repeat, and we wanted the size to be set to cover, because that's often what you want. So we've got rivers, butterfly, dolphin, eagle, goldfish. Actually, maybe we want these set to contain rather than cover. So contain means it will stay within the bounds of the image area. Let's go back. What else have we got? And some pebbles. That was, I think, what I wanted to show you finally. So yeah, we've got a series of pebbles. That's quite nice for making shapes look a bit more organic. I'm going to use this option because I want to show you how you can also just use the position property to move things along a little bit. So I'm recording this video in Firefox because there's an issue with Chrome when you adjust the value of mask images. Chrome reloads the image very quickly and it flickers white. So just so you know, if you're working a lot with mask images, you might want to just fire up Microthemer in Firefox for now. I think that might be because Chrome still currently supports mask images using its WebKit syntax, so maybe the support isn't 100%, but it is in terms of what site visitors see. So Microthemer adds the WebKit prefix for you, and then mask images will work fine. This is just a quirk of Microthemer where you dynamically change the styling and it just flashes a little bit. Okay, so anyway, yeah, let's have that in the center. So moving on, we're now going to apply a mask, multiple mask images to this image of some dolphins. So I'll select this here, and I'm going to choose dolphin from the drop-down list. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this, copy it, and then I'm going to put my mouse just at the end here and paste in the mask image 3 times. And I'm going to set the size to contain. For the first one, I'm going to say no repeat. No repeat. Okay, and then I can go ahead and move the smaller ones. Actually, I'm going to also set the size of the smaller ones to say 30% and 40%. 40%. Okay, and then I'll start moving the position as well. Center. You only need to define center once, and then so the way the position properly works is the first value 0%. I'm going to say 0%. 0%. The first value is the horizontal positioning. The second value is the vertical positioning. So that's maybe not too bad actually for that one image there, and I'm going to say, I don't know, 50% and 50% this image, or 60. Okay, so now maybe I'll use the slider to just move it along a little bit. So I'll move that down slightly here, and then I'll use the slider to move this here. Yeah, does that look all right? Maybe tiny touch more. Yeah, there we go. And I recommend using percentage points for defining the position here, because then when it scales down, it will move much better. Okay, so now if we move down to this image here, I just wanted to show you how you can also define, instead of choosing an image, you can define a simple gradient. So I'm just going to go with the radial gradient, the radial fade out gradient. I'm also going to turn this off so you can see what we're doing a bit more. And like with the position values you saw for the dolphins, you can fine-tune the positioning here. So I could bring this down a little bit. Maybe that's a bit too much. Yeah, just enough there, just so that we get the square edges removed. And also you can, so by default the gradient works by its full opacity in the center, and it immediately starts going to transparent as we go out, because this is set to 0% here. But if I increase this a little bit, then we get to see the sunglasses a bit more clearly. So you can play around with the gradient values the Microthemer sets. Okay, so moving down here, we've got this goldfish and some text, and we've got this octopus. So first thing I'll do is select this image here and just make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go to the dimensions. I'll set the max width to, I don't know, quite a bit smaller, maybe about that size. And I will set the float option to left. Basically, because what we're going to do is we're going to create the text to align around a shape. This only works when we're floating an image. So the image has to come before the text, and we need to float it either left or right. So I'm going to go to the position property and set float to left for this. And then now we can go ahead and, oh, actually, I was going to set the background. Yeah, this is the container. To black as well, just to match this, so it looks a bit nicer. Actually, before I do that, I will create the shape, because then it's a bit clearer. So if we go back to the masking options, so I'm going to use the clip path option here, and I'm going to search for circle. Yeah, that's what I want. And we will maybe bring this. Again, I'll turn off the highlighting here, and I'll just bring this down, so it's perfect circle. It's obviously not a perfect square. So if I bring that down, we've got a nice circle effect here. Now I can go ahead and just copy this. I find what you do is, even if you're not going to use the clip path and you just want the shape outside, it's easier to define it on clip path so you can see what's happening a bit more clearly, and then just copy and paste that into the property below. And now we've got the text that's following the shape that we've created here. The shape margin property allows you to create a little bit more room, but just be aware that, so actually if I turn the highlighting back on, this is the natural bounds of the image before we applied our shape, which we shrank it a little bit with by saying 47%. The shape margin property, it will only make the text circular up to the point of the natural point of the image here, where it would normally end. So you might also want to, with shapes, you might want to use the regular margin property. So just put the margin, there we go, and that pushes it out like so. Okay, so that's over. And this works, I've noticed, quite well with basic shapes. And the margin property doesn't work quite so well when you use an image as well. So this, we've used a basic circle around this goldfish, but you could also set an image mask, like the dolphin, for instance, and the text will sort of wrap around the contours of the dolphin. But I've noticed that with Firefox and Chrome, the way the text wraps is a little bit inconsistent. So it's just something you want to, if you are using that in your design, you just want to test in both to make sure it's looking good. So the shape margin, I'm actually just going to remove that. As a little hack, you can use so you can use the transform property to slightly move things over. So if I tell you what, I'm going to set that black background now on this section. So if I go to the background, I'll set the color to black, and then the text color to white, so we can still see the text. There we go. What I'm now going to do is set a transform on this. Oh, actually, I've just noticed that we need a bit more padding on this section here. So let me reselect this and go to the padding. I'll say padding top, I don't know, 8 rem, and padding bottom, 8 rem. And then maybe yeah, no, 8 will do actually, I think. And just turn off the highlighting here so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to set an angle, slight angle. So again, I'm going to use one of these pre-defined options in Microthemer. So we want, let's say, top ascend, like so. And I'm going to, was it this value? Yeah, I'm just going to make that a little bit more subtle. Let's say like that. Okay, and now I'm just going to use the transform properties to move this fish over slightly that way. So we've created the margin by shifting this over rather than relying on the shape margin property. Okay, so now moving on to the octopus. Here we've got an octopus that's image where it's fully opaque here and it's going gradually faded to the left here. And so this I just wanted to use as an example to show you how the shape image threshold property works. So again, actually I'm going to need to float this this image to the right. And then if we go to the shape, what we're going to do is we're going to define the to get this to work, we need to define the shape outside as the same image here. So in Gutenberg, I've defined this octopus with an image, and the image itself already has opacity in it. It's not been created with a mask like we did with the sunglasses. I've noticed this only works when the image inherently has opacity. I did try creating gradient fades and then seeing if this would work, and certainly at the time of recording anyway it doesn't work. Maybe it will in future. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the same image path that we've used to define the image in Gutenberg to load it on the page as the shape outside, and then if we set the the threshold, when we gradually increase this, then the text will start to overlap more of the image as we increase this, because it becomes less opaque, more opaque the more we go to the right, like so. Okay, so now let's move on to the shape dividers. So I'm just going to set the background color on this option here to blue, so we can see what we're doing a bit more. And then in order to create the wavy effect, we're going to use before and after pseudo elements and set the mask on those. So the reason we can't set the divider on the section itself is, just says to no repeat, is that the proportions aren't right. So this section is quite long, and sections will always have a variable length. And so either we've cropped too much, or if we were to set the size to cover, then we lose the amplitude of the wave. It still crops a bit of the text, I think, at the top. So I'm just going to remove these styles. So the solution is to create a before element. A before element is essentially an element. It's got a pseudo element because it's created with CSS rather than existing in the actual HTML of the page here. And it behaves as if we've inserted, like say before this heading 2, an actual HTML element in terms of styling it on the page. So I'm going to go ahead and use this create an additional selector option, select this, and then go to the modifiers option and choose the before option and then save that. But for our before element to be visible, there's a few properties we need to set. One of them is the content property. It needs to be set to an empty string. So you could set text, but we're just using this for visual styling, so we'll set an empty string. And then there's some other properties. I'm going to use the code editor just to show you that you can also write styles via the code editor. So I'm going to set the width to 100%. I'm going to set the height to 200 pixels. Whoops. 200 pixels, and I might change that in a minute. I'm going to set a background color to red to begin with, just for testing. And then position it. I'm going to set positioning to absolute, and now we can see it. And by default, it aligns itself at the top edges of the element. But if we set the bottom property to 100%, then the bottom edge will align 100% away from the bottom edge of the section, and that's what we want for a top section divider. So now let me just go and change the color. You can use this var field to enter CSS or Sass variables, Sass if you've enabled support for that by the settings. But you can also enter anything that isn't a standard RGB, or hex color in here. So I'm going to put inherit. That way it'll inherit the blue color. We only have to define the blue on the actual divider itself. If we want to change the color, it would change on both. So that saves us a bit of time. And now we can go ahead and set our shape divider. So I'm going to choose waves top out of the list, and I'm going to set it to not to repeat, no repeat, and let's try setting the size to cover. Yeah, there we go. And then actually we've probably set the height a bit too high, so let's adjust that now using the slider. Okay, bring that down. So we basically want it to join this section here. And cover the gap. And then if we want the double wave effect, what we can do is create an after pseudo selector. So you've got you can use before and after. That's what you got at your disposal when you're setting these pseudo elements. And before and after, they don't the position doesn't have to actually match up to the name. So we can use an after selector, but we're going to position it in almost exactly the same place as our before using our absolute positioning. So to save a bit of time, I'll just go to the menu here where we've got a before selector, and I'm just going to duplicate that now. And then I can edit the duplicate manually. So I'm going to call this after. And I will also change the actual code to use after, and then update that. And then now if we go to this selector here and we go to the the shape divider. I'm just going to change this to an opacity, and then we'll just set the position of our opaque wave to slightly. In fact, I'm going to do that in as a pixel of fixed amount. And let's say, I don't know, I'll use my mouse wheel to just increment this. Yeah, maybe about that. And actually, I think maybe we need to increase the padding a little bit more on the section above. So let's go with 16. Maybe, yeah, and then I'll just do the same on the top as well. Let's have a look. How's that? It's looking a little bit better now. I'll just turn this off so we can see. Oh, maybe even more actually. 20. Yeah. And then on the top here, yeah, we've got a nice amount of space on the top here. In fact, we could also, with this octopus, we could also try out, if we go to it's a bit square at the moment, so I'm going to look for the radial gradient, and it's the fade out. Let's turn off this so we can see, and then again I'll just bring this down. Yeah, maybe just a touch. Right, so actually, maybe it looks a bit better actually than the sunglasses as well, because I think on a dark background this fade effect works a little bit better. Okay, so we've got our wave effect and the shape dividers. So I just want to finish now by showing you how to create wave or any kind of shape divider on an image, which again, like our section, it might be quite tall. We don't know how tall it is. And if we were to I'm going to go waves, what do we want? Waves multiple, and I'll set that to no repeat. And what we want is we want to have this on the top, but we also want the turtle to display. And you can't we can't use our before and after trick on images, unfortunately, because images don't have a way of putting an element inside it. Like, so for instance, this figure element, that could have an element inside, the div element. This has a H2 inside, but images don't have anything inside. CSS before and after don't work, so we need a different technique. And this is one I came across when I was just playing around with the dolphins earlier, before recording this video. So what we can do is we can set our shape divider, and I'm going to set the height of this to sorry, the size of this to the width to be auto, and the height to be, say, 20%. Whoops, 20%. Now what we can do is I'm just going to cut this. I'm going to define a gradient. I'm going to define bottom to top, and I'm just going to insert the image before that so that the size value that we had, it still works on that. And then with the gradient, what I'm going to do is set the size to be 100%. If you in both directions. So if you just define one, that means the width is 100% and the height is 100%. So now what we need to do is just slightly tweak our gradient value. That was at the end here. So to begin with, what I'll do is I'll move because we can still see some of the fade above these waves. So if I just move this down, and if you hold Alt and Shift, by the way, I can't remember if I've mentioned this already, then it will do increments of 10. So I've moved that down to, so the opacity only starts here and then blends down into the black, which is basically full opacity. But we don't want the image to be faded, we want it to be continuous, so I'm just going to move the black gradient up all the way, oops, that's a bit too far, all the way to meet the other gradient, so it's now just a solid continuous line. And then our waves, which are basically just an SVG with some solid waves, and then some slightly more opaque waves, and then some slightly more transparent waves, and very transparent waves in the background. And so it blends in nicely with our image, and it will scale down nicely. So we can go right down to here, let's say, and it will still work on smaller screens. Well, I hope this video has been useful. As I mentioned earlier, you can practice this yourself using the online demo. And if you want to try Microthemer on your own site, simply head over to themeover.com and choose a price plan that works for you. We have a no questions 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can purchase risk-free. And if you have any questions at all, we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching.